How big is the bubble?
I think it's big, but I don't have the crystal ball. So every time there is a bubble, there is an explanation that this time is different. You know, you cannot have a bubble unless you can convince yourself that this time is different. And every time they explain why this time is different, is a different explanation. And then eventually, after so and so many years, it proved that it's not different.
So there is a bubble, a big one, and yet there is still opportunity.
There is opportunity. I think there are always opportunity in the small companies. The biggest opportunities are in the small companies, but people are psychologically hate risk. So this is why they are staying away. But I think that there are opportunities, there is opportunities, and there will always be opportunities as long as you evaluate the thing in a sober way, not just betting on big dreams.
What is the way to stay sober?
What is the way to stay sober? I wish I knew. You know, you have to be doubtful and you have to ask yourself what is really going on.
So 1968, your first startup. Until now, so many different generations, technology, entrepreneurship, innovation policies. How did you survive and thrive?
The world went huge changes. Players have been changed, generation passed, but I think the one common thing which stay, or few common things which stay all the time is number one. It's not so much about the technology, it's about the spirit of the human being, the spirit of the person, about the curiosity, about the drive to be always in the cutting edge of technology, and while the themes are being changed, the driving force are always the same. So I guess this is what kept me still being able to continue to follow and to renew my interest.
Easier said than done. You love people who can do teamwork, but you yourself is a lone champion, shall I say that?
Yes and no. You know, I manage my thing myself, but I collaborate with many, many people. So the key is to know, on one hand, how to focus on your interests, but also how to ally with other people which can supplement the things that you don't possess yourself.
You invested originally, ICQ, back in the 90s. That was the very beginning of it.
Yeah, but it was more, from my side, it was more of a matter of luck than a matter of wisdom, because when these four kids who invented the internet-wide instant messaging came to me to seek for investment, I didn't understand what they are talking. Not I didn't understand, they didn't want to tell me what they are doing. They told me it's a secretive, and the only reason I gave them the money because my son was involved in it, and he came to me, and I couldn't refuse him. But they didn't. I asked them what it is. They said this is secretive. We cannot tell you, which give you indication how much I'm being trusted by my own siblings. And 4 months after they showed it to me, I said, this is really a ridiculous idea that people, instead of picking the phone, which is so simple, and talking about the phone, you have to do it by text. Eventually, it took me a few years to realize that maybe I was mistaken. You know, when we began to get every day 100,000 new users, not today, but I'm talking now 20 years ago, it was quite interesting, which shows you, by the way, that in this business of investing in new startups, the most important ingredient is luck.
You think?
Yeah, if you're sure, because it's all statistics. You cannot look on idea or something like this and say, I know that this will succeed. You know, I invested in 86 companies, 30 of them went bust, 30 of them failed.
Well, that's supposed to be that way, right? 1/3 of them.
Yeah, I don't know if it's 1/3 or half or 25%, but a big portion of them do not succeed. This is the nature of startups.
And how many succeeded?
I sold about 30 of them, and I still have like 25. Another observation is that the idea, I used to think that the idea is overrated. Today I know that the idea is not important. What is important is the execution. You can have the same idea, but if you execute it better, you will win. Look how WeChat is now taking over the world.
China now is experiencing the economic transformation and is vigorously promoting technical innovation. The history of Israeli high-tech development is a great reference to China. Early in its nationhood, Israel's most advanced industry was military technology. But in 1967, then French President Charles de Gaulle imposed sanctions on Israel's arms exports. The Jewish state then focused on civilian industries. Besides, Israeli innovation startups would be funded by the government. They could repurchase the government's shares after their success. Foreign investment has also helped. Now the tech industry has become a pillar of Israel's economy.
The genesis of the local technological development in Israel in the early 60s was mostly tied to defense. You know, we had defense challenges, we had to resolve them. Then the French have done embargo on Israel, and I always like to say that Charles de Gaulle was the father of the Israeli high-tech because he put the embargo.
He is smiling right now when you're saying it.
And I'm saying it with tongue-in-cheek. The second stage was to begin to do civilian products. As you said, money was not available. Then the government of Israel came with a very great program called Yozma, when they told financial institutions in Israel, if you will bring a VC from America, we, the government, will put 50% of the money, but we will let you buy us out if the project is successful. And then another thing happened, which is very, very important. Companies began to do exits. And when companies began to do exits, the entrepreneurs and the investors of the early stage, the first generation of these companies, got money, they began to invest in the second generation.
The thing is, what is the role, the proper role of government?
The proper role of government, I think, is number one, to see what is missing and to step into, like Israel, the government of Israel stepped into the first generation of VCs, but then pulled back. Yeah. And other thing, to encourage the players to go and take responsibility. I don't think that the government can infuse innovation top-down, but the government can encourage the grassroots to take responsibility, to create communities, to create these meetups and tools to get them aggregated and to connect the dots. The government should act as a catalyst to cause that ecosystem will be developed. But you cannot make the ecosystem by government employees. They have to identify the authentic leaders of the community in a certain place and empower them.
And what about now? I mean, today, Israel, you still don't have the cash because foreign investors still put in a lot of their money pumped into the Israeli innovation. Why is that?
First of all, there is cash available locally, but there is a lot of cash, a lot of investment money coming from abroad. And I think this is because of the unproportional size of the high-tech in Israel compared to the total economy. You have to remember that Israel is a small country. Yes. It's 8.5 million people, which is, 25% of Beijing, the whole population of the whole country, and yet the high-tech sector is so dominant and so big, and everybody has an idea, and every kid wants to create company and to create startup. Yeah. And this creates a need. But luckily, we have in Israel a phenomena that many international companies are coming to invest in Israel. Until 6-7 years ago, it was mainly the US companies. Then the European comes, and in the last 5 years, the Chinese are beginning to play a major role. And what these multinational companies are doing, like many household names like Microsoft and Google and Facebook and Amazon and AOL and
all have their research centers there.
Yeah. And as I said, in recent years, we see the number of Chinese players, and the number goes up and up. And we now have a few investments of Chinese investment banks and investment funds, etc., in Israel, and they are more than welcome.
China has been talking about indigenous innovation, meaning innovation being born, nurtured here on this land. Is it possible?
I don't think it's not only possible, but I think it's happening. It's happening, and it's happening after the usual process that we see in everywhere where you have innovation. You know, you start in the beginning to do offshore work for other people. While doing the offshore work, you learned the processes, you created local community which know how to do it. Then few entrepreneurs emerged and said, okay, I can do it not for somebody who is sitting in overseas, I can do it for myself. And then the most important thing happened. You created role models, local role models, people like Jack Ma and Robin Lee and another 20, 30, 40 people which are inspiring a whole generation. And this is happening in China. So innovation is beginning to emerge. Now you have to enhance, you know, to put the fertilizer on this innovation process.
What is the fertilizer?
The fertilizer is building ecosystems, you know, breaking the silos. You have to work on it. You have to encourage it. The leaders, the community leaders, the leaders should show it. You know, they should get involved. They should visit the events, etc. They should inspire the people. We spoke earlier about the formats which are enhancing innovation. We see the flourishing of accelerators. Why accelerators are so good? Not because the mentor gives them an idea, but because you have 10 young people, 10 young companies sitting together and helping each other. Shared spaces, you know, like hubs.
But how to make that happen? I mean, of course, accelerator, we all understand, put them into the same space and they interact with one another. Maybe their business model complement one another, so it works. But for a country's policy, how can that be complementary?
I think the role of the country or of the city is to make sure that all the people who are involved in the startup community will meet each other, will trust each other, will support each other, will create meetings, will create hackathons, will create interaction.
But how would they trust each other? I mean, if you look at the competition in the Chinese market, you know very well, it's fearful. You've been here several years already. You understand that. People tell you different stories. They're competitors. Yeah. So how could they work together? What would bring them together?
This is, I guess, a role of education and encouragement, the understanding that everybody benefits. Yeah, you should compete, you know, you should compete, but also you should support. The Americans, who are great in inventing words for everything, call it co-opetition. And co-opetition is the key. You compete, but also you collaborate and you cooperate. You have to understand the thing is like a watch with a lot of gears. All the gears have to be in place and all the gears have to turn each other. If you don't have this glue, it's like you take the watch, you put the gears on the table, each gear separately, and then you say, why it doesn't work? I am involved in doing some 40 events per year all over the world, where I invite young people and I put them together for 2 or 3 or 4 days. I do some of it with a company like WPP, some of it with other companies, some of it with friends of mine. You bring them together, you create trust, you create friendship, they feel more comfortable to work with each other, and then good things are happening.
Talking about Chinese innovation, adaptive innovation is the word always been used. But people also wonder, from adaptive innovation to disruptive innovation, how far is it going to be? Can one country just thrive upon adaptive innovation?
First of all, I want to tell you that you see more and more disruptive innovation beginning to come from China.
Give me examples. Latest you have seen.
Latest I've seen, I'm telling you, because my origins in the internet are from instant messaging.
Yes.
The whole world, I don't know if you know, the whole world is now worship WeChat.
Of course.
Everybody is trying to be inspired by WeChat and to see what is.
But that's an example of adaptive innovation.
No, this is not adaptive, this is disruptive. I will explain how payments are being done. You have all kinds of payment service, you have e-commerce services, etc. You know, these things are coming from here because people got the ambition, people got the confidence, but people got something which is much more important. I want to tell you what I see the major thing in China, which is going to change the shape of the high-tech industry in the world.
What is it?
For the last 7, 8, 10 years, hundreds of, maybe thousands of companies evolved in China which are catering to the local market. The local market is still not saturated. While they are catering to the local market, they are going this process that we said before. They learn how to produce, they learn how to develop, they learn how to manage teams, they learn how to do delivery, they learn how to do quality control. But in the process, they are improving the product and the processes. And once the local market will be saturated, they will begin to look for outside market. We are seeing it in China, and if you want to see what will happen, look on Alibaba and Huawei as two proxies of the ability of the Chinese companies to go abroad.
Yossi, what a pleasure.
Yeah, it's a
Thank you so
pleasure,
much.
and I'm looking forward to our conversation a year from now.
Absolutely.
By all means. Thank you.